Hi all, this time I'm going to talk to you about how to prepare for a design sprint. Whether you're starting out or whether you've done multiple design sprints in the past, hopefully this is helpful. This is how we do it in Relab to make sure that the sprint goes well and it goes smoothly. So one of the things that we always do in Relab before we start a sprint process is this process that we call pre-flight. So during the pre-flight process, what we're doing is really trying to define a couple of things up front before jumping into the sprint process itself. So there are three main things that we at least need to have before you jump into day one of the sprint. So the first thing here that I've listed is the brief or the challenge. We're talking very top level here, but the brief or challenge is important. I'll get into that in a second. The second one is the proto persona itself, knowing exactly who is the user or the persona that you're trying to prototype for. And number three is the experience map itself. I'll get into that in a second, but essentially these three things, if you have it on hand before starting day one, or if the sprint team has familiarized themselves with these three things before even jumping to day number one, it's actually very helpful. And so far from our experience, it has been a game changer. So the first thing that we're gonna try and do is the sprint brief itself, or the challenge. And the best way to do this is to summarize it almost like in a vision or a goal form, although it's different to the long-term goal or the goal exercise that you're going to do in day one. But this will at least give you a heads up. Well, not really just yourself, but the whole sprint team. So the idea is you do this pre-flight session a week before the sprint starts, together with at least the decider, okay? So a sprint brief could look something like this. It's to create a ... for whatever it is, to do what, so that what results comes in by when. Okay, so I'm gonna try and fill this up. Let's just say our brief is to create a digital platform for shoppers to easily purchase products online so that the business can increase user engagement by, trying to be measurable here, by, let's say, 15%. By means the timeline, let's say Q3 of 2020. Okay, so what I've done there is I've defined what the high level vision is, or what the high level brief is, so that the sprint team get themselves familiarized with what the company is trying to achieve, and this is done collaboratively. I won't get into the details on what type of activities we would do at this stage in terms of having the team come up with this, but essentially what you want to come up with is something like that: to create a digital platform for shoppers to easily purchase products online so that the business can increase user engagement by 15% by Q3 of 2020. That is a sprint brief for you. So the next thing that we're going to invest time on is really understanding who the user is. Knowing the user, knowing the proto persona is actually very important, and it's always important to remind the rest of the team members on who is it exactly that we're dealing with. So therefore, based on the sprint brief here, so remember that was number one, brief, or sometimes we like to call it the challenge. So based on this, we're going to focus on the who, which is, in this case, is this person right here, that role, who is the shopper. So the shopper is the one that we're going to focus on as the proto persona. So now let's talk about proto persona. All right, so essentially, it's just trying to create a persona around this specific user. Now, shoppers might be a little bit too broad, that you need to narrow down further into what types of shopper is this person, or what type of different shoppers do you want to divide this into. But for the purposes of this activity or this video, I won't actually do that. I'll leave it broad as shoppers, okay? So, proto-persona is a shopper. We also like to give this person a name. Let's just say this person is called Jess. Okay, so what do we want to focus on? There are 4 things that we want to focus on this one persona. Number 1 is the behavior. We also want to know this person's facts. And then we want to know their problems, and ultimately their needs. Now, the needs is actually the most important bit out of this, and usually the way we do this as an activity, just very quickly, is to do it on a wall. Now, just imagine that this is a wall, but this is a micro wall on a whiteboard. We'll just label this as, say, behavior, facts, problems, needs, and we'll drop in sticky notes into each and every one of them, done by the team members, okay? But at the end of the day, everyone would go through their sticky notes, and every team member will have an idea of what just the shopper's needs are. So that's an example of how we do a proto-persona, and then you can summarize it as, you know, Jess is a shopper and her needs are yada yada yada, okay? And that gets documented. Now, the last thing that we're gonna go through is also around the user, and it's called the experience map. So the experience map here is actually very design thinking. It's very based on UX processes, but we're not going to focus too much on, if you know what it is, there is usually points about emotions and how people feel, the feelings and the touch points, and there are things like that. But in this experience map, it's going to be more like a user journey map. So we're going to focus on this bit right here, referring back to the challenge or the brief. It's going to be about to easily purchase products online. So it's for the shopper to easily purchase products online. So what you want to encourage the team to do is just quickly map out what the experience is, starting from discover, all the way down to actually go through post-purchase type experience. So, for example, post-purchase. Between that, you've got learning, using, deciding, purchase, and let's say post-purchase is another component of it. So you have discover, learning, using, deciding. Now it doesn't have to be this, but essentially the idea is you're going to try together with the sprint team map out what the customer process or cycle is like. There are heaps of articles about experience mapping, but remember, for this one, we're not going to focus so much on feelings. It's more about the actions, okay? The different stages of actions that users go through. So for example, as a shopper, what do I do, or what does Jess does as a shopper in trying to easily purchase products online? If there is an existing product, you can actually base it on the current experience, the current state. If there's none at all, you can base it on the assumptions that you may have. So discover, there might be a few points. card number 1, card number 2. There might be a couple of points in learning as well, and I won't get into too much details, but essentially that's what you do. Now, having covered these 3 things, which is the brief or the challenge, the proto persona, and the experience map, and this is actually not done in just 1 day's time. You will need at least 2-3 days even to cover off all of these bits, depending on how many personas or proto personas that you may have, because the shopper may not be the only one. There might be a couple of other ones as well. But having this mapped, then your team will have whether it's either a brief understanding or quite a thorough understanding already about who the user persona is, about what type of experience they go through in the cycle of interacting or engaging with the product, as well as what the essential brief or challenge and the top level is for this product, okay? So having this done earlier before your day 1 starts in the design sprint process, it's actually a little hack to get everyone already aligned before you start the process. And so far for us, it has been very, very helpful, because what that means is you're getting buy-in earlier, you're getting teams to align, you're preparing them for what's about to come in the design sprint process. And by doing this stuff, you will have alignment covered at least 30-40% upfront. And it's very, very helpful. Hopefully you find it helpful as well, and as always, enjoy the process and try. This is one thing that I always tell my clients: try to not strive for perfection, but it's all about the progress, okay? And therefore the process will become very, very valuable. All right, hope you enjoy it and have a good one.